Alright, so this is more so of a video that's meant to be viewed in retrospect, where we go back through Stay Night and talk about some of the scenes after the fact, bringing us to the very first scene, the iconic summoning of Saber, where you had Shiro run into the shed when he was trying to get away from Ku, and he summoned Saber by accident. I ask of you, are you my master? And although he doesn't know it at the time, this is her second time being summoned in a row. Now, there's a lot of things that change between the dynamic of Shiro and Saber and Kirisugu and Saber, and that goes for the story as a whole. When it comes to Fate Zero, there were a lot more things going on, more people involved, more subplots to take care of in between. So naturally, when Kirisugu summoned Saber, it wasn't really that big of a deal. It felt more like something to just get out the way and mark it off of the list. But in Stay Night, where the story is able to solely focus on Shiro and you don't have all these other elements going on, it felt a lot more grandiose. It felt magical, like it was really a sight to behold. And even before you get to the Magus aspect, Kirisugu and Shiro, in the way that they do things, are like night and day. If you look at the age, Kirisugu was knocking on 30. This dude was 29 years old. When you're 29 years old, there's really no room for you to be constantly asking questions like you were when you were younger. You're grown. By now, you should be well aware. So a lot of Kirisugu's interactions are less of, should I do this? And more of, is this the most efficient way? Shiro, on the other hand, is still in grade school. And that's one of the biggest issues between the two, is that you have a bunch of people that may have seen Zero, and they're coming from Zero saying, well, why isn't Shiro more mature? And it gives off the wrong idea, not only because of the age gap of Kirisugu being 12 years older than Shiro, but also it comes off as if they've never been 17 before themselves. Like at 17, for the average person, that's still a kid. You're still a teenager. So on top of you trying to figure out why this supernatural being has been summoned in your shed, he's also still learning the world itself and learning things about himself, everything all around. So it's really disingenuous not to allow him that growth, especially considering the position that he's in. Like I said, a 17-year-old might be grown mentally depending on what they've been through. He's closer to that side of the spectrum, having lost his family at an early age. But at the same time, you can see that he still has a lot to learn when he meets a person like a Rin, who's the exact same age as him, but has a ton of more things on her plate just from being a noble. And the main reason that she exceeds him so much is because she was expected of a lot of things ever since she was a child. Shiro, any expectation that was placed on him was one that he put upon himself, and not something that was really beat into him by his parents. Even the goal of following Kirisugu was something that he did of his own volition. It was the only thing that he had. Kirisugu didn't want him to follow it, but the way he saw it, he owed him that much, and what else was he going to do? He lost everything prior. And the change in their character is something that directly affects Saber, because she's coming out of Zero with Kirisugu having this traditional mentality of, you're a tool, you're gonna do what I say, oh, you're mad, who cares? To a younger person like Shiro, who actually empathizes with her situation, sometimes too much. Oh, I don't want you to fight, you're a girl. Not realizing that she's the most dangerous person in the war, but he has no idea. That's just the way that he was raised. You know, being around people like Tsiah, who we all know is a tomboy. So I'm sure she didn't instill in him the idea that, A, not every woman is gonna be the same, even if you don't believe it. Regardless of sex, some people are just gonna jump out there and do what they want to do. And with the case of King Arthur becoming Arturia, that was exemplary. And even looking at things like her design, after all these years, I still feel like she has a design that leans more toward the interesting side than otherwise. You know, it's not some run-of-the-mill armor with default colors and no emblems and one pattern. And now that I look at it, I can't help but remember the fight that she had with Diarmu where she took the armor off. And it makes me feel like the things that Urobuchi had her doing was that much more silly, right? Because you had her take off the armor as a matter of conservation, but if we're being honest, she doesn't doesn't have a lot of armor to begin with. The armor that she has, her wearing this is negligible to a person like Lancelot, who actually has a full body set of armor. Now, that's not to say that what she has doesn't affect her at all, but I could actually see him taking his off because there is so much of it. Half of hers is already gone. Her shoulders are exposed, parts of her legs are exposed, she doesn't wear a helmet. Oh nah, that's too much, this gotta go. Another thing that it makes me think about is her demeanor, especially when she's in battle. Shiro is the worst master of the two. And when I say worst, I really just mean that he's inexperienced. Yet, if you look at the way that she fights between Stay Night and Fate Zero, in Fate Zero, she fights like she should be under Shiro, more cunning, more reserved. And in Fate Stay Night, you kind of see her just unga through everything. Even the scenes that were more personal to her, there was definitely precision involved in Stay Night, but not nearly as much as what you would see in Zero most of the time. You know, things like her going against Lancelot in the parking garage. He's out here shooting reinforced sniper bullets and she's lifting up entire trucks with her sword to protect herself. Couple of reasons for this. For one, you have the restrictions of being under Kirisugu. He wants everything done a certain way. Two, with Shiro being inexperienced, Saber can't afford to be cunning because she has to make up the difference for him. It's not like Kirisugu where he can pop out with his time altar or Hakuno who can pop out with his dead face. If she screws up, they're both finished. And if the story itself is anything to go by, scenes like him using his command spell to stop her mid-battle just from him being in shock, he's much more likely to do something that goes against her than anything. Another part of her design, her invisible sword. It's such a simple spell, it's just an illusion, yet nobody really has that. And if they do have it, she had it first. She's the one that set the tone. Yo, when she first came out, she was stomping Ku bad to the point where she had him running, which is a very odd thing to see in relation to Fate Zero, especially considering they're both in the same class, they both have the same reach, they're very skilled, and they're both demigods. Yet if you look at the fight she had with Diarmu, at a point it seems like she struggled so much against him for what's practically the same situation. And this is the point where a lot of people are going to come in and be like, well, the only reason she did so well is because Ku had a command spell to hold him back. I'm gonna stop you right there. And I've addressed this years ago. People take that line from Kirei and run with it way too often. The line is that you're not supposed to finish the servant off. He was scouting, he was supposed to test the waters. It never said don't fight seriously. It never said don't be a threat. At that point, he wasn't holding back that much because he nearly killed her. And she averted the hit through her luck and instinct skills. I think a lot of people forget that you can go through a command spell anyway. We've seen it multiple times. Case in point, Heracles in his summoning during Strange Fate. It's just a heavy magical restraint. Now, I will say that knowing from the story, Ku can use Gayborg 7 times in a row and then he just leaves, there's definitely some convenience there. So even if he happened to miss the first one, he can just run it back. And she's definitely not avoiding the second because now she's cursed. But then he shook the spot. So going back to Singularity F, when he said that he can one-shot Saber, that's not cap. He definitely can. Will he is a completely different story. The other scene, of course, is Ren's flashback to when she's talking about Tokiomi. Now, I make jokes about Tokiomi all the time, and I will continue to do so. But I'd be lying if I said that, in Ren's eyes at least, that he wasn't her idea of a proper father. She truly loved Tokiomi to death. She says this out her own mouth. She modeled her entire life after him, and he's the reason that she still believes in herself by the time this Stay Night rolls around. And why wouldn't she love him that much? He set her on the path for the ideal life. She could have been the one that was taken away instead of Sakura. The roles could have been reversed. And even then, her having this quote-unquote ideal life comes at the cost of her sanity. It might look like it's only greener on the other side, but it's really a blessing and a curse. Because while she does have her freedom, she has to walk with this freedom while carrying the weight of their absence on her shoulders her entire life. Mother gone, father gone, sister gone, and she actively can't do anything about it. But she's supposed to be the happy one. She's supposed to take all of that in and still be the happy one. Matter of fact, let me not say happy because she is still a mage. She's supposed to be the fortunate one. As soon as the novel opens up, there's a line that she brings up. It was cold, and she says it's so cold that I can even see my breath indoors. And on top of that, there's no one else in the house to warm it up. Like he went out of his way to let you know this lifestyle is still desolate for her by wording it that way. I mean, other than Kirei, there probably hasn't been anybody in that house for a long time until Archer showed up.